Start the recording. Perfect. All right, and I'll go ahead with the intro. So International Baccalaureate is a worldwide nonprofit education program founded to give all students the opportunity to receive an education fit for a globalizing world. There are 4 IB education programs, all of which are intended to develop students' intellectual, emotional, personal, and social skills. The IB Pathway is a rigorous program offered all across Sacramento area and is a program that benefits students' future. IB is offered at schools such as Inderkum, Burbank, Granite Bay, Mira Loma, Oakmont, Laguna Creek, and more. My name is Adiyah, and I'm the Chief of Apprentices on the College to Career Ready team. And today I'm joined by Ms. Downing, which is the Director of IB at Inderkum, to discuss why and how students can apply. So thank you for joining us today, Ms. Downing. Our first question is, how would you describe in your own words the International Baccalaureate program?
So International Baccalaureate, or IB, which is a little bit less of a mouthful, has existed since 1968. As the name implies, it is international, so it can be found in countries all over the world. When it was originally founded, the idea was to help students of either, generally it was high level corporate executives or students whose parents were involved somehow in diplomatic corps, because both of them have that problem is they often had to move from place to place relatively often. And the thought was, well, if we could have a program that would be consistent as they made those moves and also show that they were meeting high standards, that would help them in moving forward and going on with their further education. And so the folks who got started with IB, after a while, they started thinking, maybe if it's good for these kids, it would be good for other kids too. So let's open this up. It's not only for the children of these, high level and usually quite wealthy people, but it did start out that way in those very selective private schools. Now has expanded, as we said, all over the world. Great growth in public schools, and California is one of the centers. So in fact, if California was its own country, we would have the 5th most IB schools of any country in the world, right? Which is a pretty impressive stat. We're like right after Canada. So the US has quite a concentration. And as you mentioned, there are 4 different programs: PYP for primary years, pre-K to 5th, middle years program, MYP for 6th to 8th, Diploma, 6th to 10th, Diploma program 11th and 12th. And usually when people hear IB or International Baccalaureate, that's what they're really focusing on, is Diploma program, because that was the original program. It's the one that exists in most places. And then the most recent one is called Career Program, which is kind of crossing those borders between some of the career tech things and academics. As you mentioned, definitely a rigorous program with high expectations, especially for those DP levels, because there are exams at the end and it's expected that you know certain materials to take those exams. But if we look at all the way starting from PYP and all the way up, it's more of a holistic program and educational philosophy. How do teachers present things? How do we make connections between subjects in the real world? We're looking at some character education. So there's that learner profile and the idea that there are certain attributes that make people successful, not just in their personal lives, but at touching the world around them. And having that theme, what connects it together in the ways of thinking? Because what we really want is, we know subjects change all the time. How can we create great thinkers who go out there and want to change the world in a positive way?
Wow, thank you for all the insight. I didn't even know a lot of that. So it was really good to learn about that. And my next question is, who's eligible to apply to the IB program, and how can students get involved?
Okay, so this is a question that can depend a lot on the individual school, right? So in our district, our particular school, Inderkum, middle years program is all 9th and 10th graders, right? And it's all 6th through 8th graders who go to Natomas Middle School are part of that. And it's all the 7th and 8th graders at Paso Verde, which is one of our newer schools, right? So middle years program has transitioned in the last few years that if a school enters into it, it's required to offer it to all their students in those grades. Primary years program has always been for all the students in those lower grades. Where you see a little bit more difference is in the diploma program. And so schools are still not required to offer diploma program to all our students. And it's in most places, it's an opt-in program in terms of students can choose to take those classes and they may choose to take other classes in the school. So at our school, students apply to enter what we call scholars in 9th and 10th grade. And the idea is to kind of ramp them up and accelerate them a little bit more. Because if they know they want to go into DP classes, I always say going from regular 10th to IB 11th would be such a jump. If we can ramp you up, we can get you better ready. And lots of schools follow that model in terms of you do something in preparation to get ready for those DP classes, whether or not they have an MYP at their school. There are some schools, trying to think if there's any really close to us, that are DP for everyone, meaning, well, okay, Kit Carson, which is in the Sacramento City Unified District, every student does full DP, meaning they're going for the IB diploma, meaning that every one of their classes in 11th and 12th is an IB class, right? And so that's a kind of a different model, because the expectation is if you walk into that school, this is what you're going to do. On the other hand, you may choose not to go to that school in that first place, right? So we try not to be a super selective thing. Some schools are more so, some schools are less so, in that any student who feels like, they really want to take on these challenges, and Adiyah, you're one of these students that says, I'm pretty prepared. I'm looking for more challenges because what I've had so far in middle school just isn't really enough to stimulate me. Right? Then we're taking you on, and our application is pretty brief. We're checking on grades, we're checking on teacher recommendations just to make sure that yes, you are the kind of student who is looking for more challenges and who's willing to work towards that. But a lot of it is your desire to be part of it, and you're not required to get A's in everything and be equally strong in every area. Some schools might have more stringent standards, so it's really important to check the school's website and see what are their timelines, what are their expectations for getting involved. DP is that challenge in terms of if you were really struggling and kind of behind grade level and where you were, you might find it a challenge to keep up with those. And our philosophy is every student should be challenged but not overwhelmed. Not everyone is ready for everything at the same time. But a student who feels like, oh, I can't take it all on, I want to take 1 or 2 IB classes, that's something we can offer.
Great. Thank you for all that input. My next question is for our listeners watching who may want to apply. What do you think makes a good application to the IB program?
So again, it depends a lot on which school you go to. So it's important to look early, right? In some schools, you may need to apply during 8th grade going into 9th. If we're looking at that for high school, in some schools, the application might come from going from 10th to 11th. Okay, so in our particular district, it's at that 8th grade level. Check with your school and see where it is. We are looking for, a decent level of success. As again, it doesn't have to be a student who's just off the charts school star. Some schools are very specific. So Mira Loma says you have to score above a certain percentile on standardized tests, right? Different standards for different schools. As I said, we're looking a lot for that interest and support. So that you're taking on extra, more than the regular student has, and you're willing to commit to that. That's a huge part of it. And I think probably everywhere is looking for some kind of teacher recommendations. Again, not saying that this is the best student they ever had, saying that this is a student who really cares about learning. That's what we're looking for.
Great. I love that. Why do you think IB is important for students in high school, like after high school, their college and career trajectory?
There are plenty of statistics, and this is affirmed by talking to our own alumni, showing that students who complete the IB program or a substantial number of IB classes first are accepted to colleges at higher rates, that they graduate colleges at far higher rates, and on time, which your parents will appreciate, that if you can get through college in 4 or 5 years versus 6 or 8 years, that's a big difference, right? Now, some of that may be that the kinds of students who choose to take on these challenges, whatever we put in front of them would do better. But we're also seeing students telling us when they go that they find themselves better prepared than their peers who also made into that college. So now we're comparing, students who all made it into whichever college it is, and they're saying, no, I'm more prepared. I understand better how to connect things. I understand better how to manage my time. I have more experience writing papers, and I can apply that in these classes. I know how to find the big ideas in there. And I think that's where the real payoff is. We would love to announce that every single student that goes through our IB program goes in with college units. Lots of them do, not all of them do. And that's going to be true for any school that you check with. But the education, the value of that learning and the ability to think and then apply those skills further on are a huge asset. And students are personally feeling that payoff beyond just anything the statistics can tell us.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that reflected in some people I know have graduated too. And just kind of bouncing off that question, from being, a program director for IB at Inderkum for a substantial amount of time, how have you seen students grow from like their freshman to their senior year in the IB program?
Well, I will tell you what the students tell me. They're tired and they're stressed. And you're going to hear that in a lot of places. And we strive every year to make a little bit less of that. We're doing, we're hearing them, and there's a certain amount of requirements doing that. At the same time, while they like to blame it on IB, I also look at these are students like you who are involved in so many things. They're doing sports, they're doing clubs, they're real leaders. So it's not just that they're being IB. They are the kind of people who want to reach out and do all of these other things, right? So they're gaining those skills in learning how to work through things and solve those problems. They are gaining in terms of building connections with other students in a school. And we see here a real sort of positive kind of competition where, in the sense that students are learning more from each other about opportunities and then going along and finding that, or thinking about going to schools outside of California and encouraging each other to do that. That environment can vary from school to school. We've had students transfer from other places and tell us, well, at other places it felt more competitive and this and that. So I think that's something for a student to be aware of, can take away. How can I work with people instead of trying to compete against them all the time? How can we all benefit and grow from this? How can I bring other people along with me? That's what I encourage. And I apologize because I think somewhere in there I went off track of your question, but I hope I've shared something useful.
No, yeah, I think you did. I think it's also really notable. I did some student and alumni interviews too about IB, and they really noted that kind of being in that environment where people were determined to kind of meet their goals and all that stuff really, made them more want to meet their goals or get involved in more things. And I think that's really, unique. And I feel like great about IB, especially at our schools. I feel like, being around people who are determined is constantly motivating you to do better in a healthy way, which I think is really great.
Exactly. And I'm going to interrupt you here before you go on the next question, because you reminded me where I was going. And so you talk to students sometimes and tell them stress tired, and you talk to seniors in May at any IB school, they're going to start telling you this is awful, never do that. And literally they'll go tell the freshmen that. When I talk to them again in December after they've gone off to college, like, this was so worth it. I'm so glad that I did it. I really get it now. I'm starting to see how this works. And so it's that perspective. And again, really stepping back from them in the moment, it can be hard, but then later on appreciating what you've learned from the journey.
Yeah, I think that's really notable. And then for our listeners that may not know, how can being an IB affect a student's GPA?
So as with AP courses, the idea is that the courses are being taught at a higher level. So IB diploma program courses, those ones in grades 11 and 12, are comparable to freshman year at a university, right? And because of that, and that we recognize that we're challenging the students to go deeper and go faster, they are awarded weighted grades for those courses, right? So Again, this can vary a little bit from campus to campus, depending on which courses they're taking and which they're approved, but most IBGP courses are approved for honors weight at UC and other colleges, meaning that instead of 4 points for an A and 3 points for a B, it's 5 points for an A, 4 for a B, 3 for a C. It's still 1 for a D, right? D's don't get you those same college credits. So when students are calculating their GPAs and doing their college applications, they're going to score higher. So at Inderkum, with all the ins and outs of our courses, students can max out, I think it's somewhere about a 4.85 if they've had A's and everything versus the traditional 4.0.
Great, that's amazing. And what's the difference between the diploma and certificate pathway?
So all of you students who are 11th and 12th graders and taking IB classes, I would consider IB diploma program students, right? That's the name of the program. Some of you, we say you're on a diploma pathway, and this will be true at any IB school if you are taking 6 IB subjects, right? And you're also doing the core pieces, which is the theory of knowledge class, writing an extended essay, and completing the CAS, creativity, activity, and service requirements. Right. So going for being a candidate for the full IB diploma requires all those pieces, the 6 core classes plus the 6 subject classes plus the 3 core requirements. Anything less, if you have 5 IB classes, but you're still doing core, or you drop the extended essay, but you're doing every other piece, we would call you a certificate student. Now, IB specifically says you are a course student. We find that a little confusing because all students take courses, and so describing someone as a course student, right? So we've stuck with the certificate description. IB reserves that for that whole certificate program, right? Little ins and outs. So a student who is taking just 1 IB course, we would describe as a certificate student. Someone who's doing 5 courses, we would describe as a certificate student. It just means that when you finish out your IB courses and you take those IB exams, you're going to get a certificate which has the results of those exams, but you're not eligible to get the full diploma, whereas someone who's doing the full package is eligible to get the full diploma.
Got it. Thank you for that insight. And for our last question today, what is one piece of advice you have for students applying or joining the program?
My piece of advice is to be in the moment, right? So being in the moment can be a lot of things. It can be when you're happy and having fun with your friends, be happy and have fun with your friends. But when you're in class, you really need to be in that class and focus in that time, because so much when I hear from students, again, back to that time management aspect and not having time for everything. I have so much homework, it takes so much time to do this. But if I go check on in class, when they're given that time to work on something, their mind is elsewhere, or they're juggling the phone or whatever other things. If you can really be in the moment, if you're in Spanish class, focus on Spanish class. If you're in chemistry class, focus on chemistry class. You're going to save yourself so much time in the end, because you're picking up what you need to right then. You're getting things done. And then you're going to be freer for those fun, enjoyable times with your friends when you're outside of the class, right? So you won't have these things weighing on you. So really be in the moment, trying to learn what you can in that time, and then that balance, right? Being able to take away time, have free time, have enough sleep, do other things in your life, because it's not our goal to have you doing school around the clock, right? Despite popular opinion. And I think you would hear this from any teacher at any school at any level, right? The more we could have you focused on class time during class and then free to do something else outside, you'd all end up feeling better about things.
Yeah, I feel that. I think time management is a big thing I had to learn, just using the time when you have it. But yeah, we thank you, Ms. Downing, once again for being such an amazing contribution to this discussion, and hope to continue connecting with you in the future. Thank you again to our listeners for being a part of this discussion as well. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. Make sure to keep up to date with new stories and interviews in the near future.